The bistro candles reflected off frosted windows like scattered stars, each flame trembling in rhythm with the soft jazz drifting through the warmth. Outside, Christmas Eve snow fell in thick, silent curtains over downtown Boston, muffling the city into something almost sacred. Maya Chen stood at the restaurant entrance, her wool coat dusted white, her breath catching not from the cold, but from the sudden, impossible recognition of the man rising from the corner table, the one her best friend had sworn would be perfect for a fresh start. But before we step deeper into this memory, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Like this video so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe to follow the next journeys. She hadn't seen Ethan Cross in 7 years. 7 years since she'd walked away from their cramped apartment in Allston, from his late nights hunched over business plans, from promises that always came second to ambition. 7 years since she'd chosen her own dreams over waiting in his shadow. Now he stood there in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his dark hair shorter, threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, his jaw sharper. But his eyes, those storm gray eyes, held the same intensity that had once undone her completely. Maya. Her name left his lips like an exhale he'd been holding for years. The hostess hovered nearby, confused by the stillness between them. Maya's fingers tightened around her clutch, her carefully applied lipstick suddenly feeling like armor that wouldn't hold. She'd spent the afternoon convincing herself that blind dates were harmless, that her friend Vanessa wouldn't steer her wrong, that it was finally time to let someone new in. She'd chosen the deep green dress because it made her feel confident, had rehearsed easy conversation topics, had promised herself she wouldn't mention her ex, the one who'd chosen his startup over their relationship, who'd disappeared into 18-hour workdays until there was nothing left between them but exhaustion and resentment. That ex was standing 3 feet away, apparently worth several $100 million now, if the business articles Vanessa had gushed about were accurate. Cross Capital. Real estate empire. Boston's most eligible bachelor, according to last month's magazine cover Maya had pointedly ignored at the checkout line. I should have known, Ethan said quietly, a wry, pained smile touching his mouth. Vanessa works in my building. I should have asked more questions. She never mentioned. Maya's voice emerged steadier than she felt. She said you were someone I needed to meet, that we'd understand each other. She wasn't wrong. He gestured to the table, uncertain now in a way that cracked something in her chest. The Ethan she'd known had been relentlessly confident, charging forward with plans and projections and 5-year forecasts. This hesitation was new. We don't have to do this. I can go. I know I'm probably the last person you wanted to see tonight. The snow kept falling beyond the window, each flake catching the streetlights like temporary magic. Maya thought about leaving, about the safety of her apartment, and the comfort of solitude she'd built so carefully around herself. She thought about the version of her that had loved him desperately, that had believed love should be enough, that had finally learned it wasn't. But she also thought about the look in his eyes, not the confidence of a multimillionaire CEO, but something rawer, more familiar. Recognition, regret, hope he was clearly trying to temper. We're already here, she heard herself say, and it's Christmas Eve. Something shifted in his expression, relief mingled with caution. He pulled out her chair, that old habit still intact, and she caught the scent of his cologne. Different now, more expensive, but underneath it that same warmth she'd once known so well. As she sat, their fingers brushed accidentally, and the contact sent electricity straight through her carefully constructed defenses. The waiter materialized with menus and wine recommendations, giving them a moment to breathe, to pretend this was normal. Maya stared at the elegant script listing items she couldn't focus on, aware of Ethan across from her, aware of 7 years collapsing into this single crystallized moment. You look beautiful, he said softly. You always did. But now you look settled, like you found what you were looking for. She met his eyes then, surprised by the honesty there, by the absence of the guarded ambition that had once defined him. "Did you?" she asked. "Find what you were looking for?" His laugh was quiet, almost bitter. "I built everything I said I would. And then I turned around and realized I'd done it alone. They ordered without tasting, spoke without planning, the conversation unfolding in fits and starts, like a song remembered only in fragments." Ethan told her about the early years after their breakup, the failed pitches, the maxed credit cards, the night he'd slept in his office because he couldn't afford both rent and employee salaries. Maya listened, watching his hands move as he spoke, those familiar gestures now accompanied by a platinum watch that caught the candlelight. She noticed he still rubbed his thumb against his fingers when he was nervous, a tell she'd once found endearing and now found devastating in its persistence. "I read about your gallery," he said, redirecting with genuine interest. "The artist collective in the South End. Vanessa showed me the feature in Boston Magazine." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. Her gallery was small, modest compared to his empire, a converted warehouse space where she showcased emerging artists who couldn't afford traditional representation. It barely turned a profit, but it was hers in a way nothing else had ever been. "It's not exactly cross-capital," she said, attempting lightness. "It's better." His voice carried no condescension, only a weight she couldn't quite identify. "It's what you talked about. That night we walked the Freedom Trail in the rain, remember? You said you wanted to create spaces where art could breathe, where people could take risks without corporate backing." He paused, his gaze holding hers with uncomfortable intensity. "You did it. You actually did the thing you dreamed about." The memory surfaced unbidden. 3 a.m. Both of them soaked, laughing under his broken umbrella, sharing dreams like promises. She'd been 24, working double shifts at a coffee shop, believing love and ambition could somehow coexist. He'd been 26, certain his business plan would change everything, certain she'd wait while he built their future. "You did too," she offered quietly. "I did what I said I would." He set down his wine glass with deliberate care. "That's different from doing what I dreamed about." The distinction hung between them, heavy with implication. The waiter brought appetizers neither had enthusiasm for: truffle risotto, seared scallops arranged like art. Maya pushed food around her plate, hyper-aware of the couple at the next table laughing easily, of the piano shifting to "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," of Ethan's eyes tracking every small movement she made. "Why did you agree to a blind date?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Vanessa said you were available, but I assumed someone like you would have." "Someone like me?" A smile ghosted across his face, sad and knowing. "You mean successful? Rich?" He leaned back, and she saw the exhaustion beneath the polish, the loneliness that wealth couldn't fill. "I've had plenty of dates, Maya. Women who want the penthouse, the private jet, the man on the magazine cover. No one who wants to know why I still can't sleep past dawn, or why I keep my first failed pitch deck framed in my office, or why I..." He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "Why you what?" The silence stretched, filled only by the ambient music and the soft murmur of other diners. Snow continued its relentless fall beyond the window, accumulating on ledges and lampposts, transforming the city into something cleaner than it was. "Why I've compared everyone to you for 7 years, he finally said, the words raw and undefended. Why nothing ever felt right because they weren't you. Maya's breath caught. The admission was too much, too soon, too honest for the careful distance she'd been trying to maintain. She should deflect, should protect herself, should remember the nights she'd cried herself to sleep while he worked, the birthday he'd missed, the slow erosion of every promise he'd made about balance and priorities and choosing them over everything else. But instead she found herself saying, "I looked you up, after I saw that magazine cover at Whole Foods last spring. I told myself I was just curious, but I read every article. I watched that interview you did about ethical development and affordable housing initiatives. She met his eyes, her own defenses crumbling. You sounded different, like you'd found something beyond just winning. His hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching hers, asking permission with the space between them. I learned what winning costs, he said quietly. I learned it too late. Maya stared at his hand, at the proximity that felt like standing at a cliff's edge. 7 years ago, she would have closed that distance without hesitation. 7 years ago, she hadn't yet learned that love without presence was just another form of loneliness. But the man across from her wasn't quite the same man she'd left. There was a gravity to him now, a weariness that spoke of lessons learned in solitude, of success that had taught him about emptiness. The question was whether people really changed, or whether they just became better at articulating their regrets. She let her hand slide forward, her fingers brushing his in a contact that felt like stepping into a current. His breath hitched audibly, and she felt the tremor that moved through him, saw the way his eyes closed briefly as if absorbing something precious and painful. I don't know if I can do this again, she whispered, but she didn't pull away. I know. His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, the gesture achingly familiar. I don't know if I deserve the chance to try. They left the restaurant near midnight, the snow still falling in thick, purposeful silence that muffled the city into intimacy. Ethan had paid without flourish, ignoring Maya's protest with a quiet, please, that held more vulnerability than command. Now they stood on the sidewalk, breath fogging in the December cold, neither quite ready to separate into different directions, different lives. I'm walking, Maya said, pulling her coat tighter. It's only 15 minutes to my place. In this weather? Ethan gestured toward the street where his driver waited in a sleek black car that screamed wealth and distance. I like the snow. She started walking before he could finish, before the offer of comfort could weaken her resolve. But she heard his footsteps behind her, quick and certain. And then he was beside her, falling into step like they'd done this 1,000 times before. They walked in silence down Newbury Street, past darkened boutiques and cafes closed for the holiday. The Christmas lights strung between buildings cast colored shadows on fresh snow, red, gold, green, turning the familiar street into something foreign and dreamlike. Maya's heels weren't made for winter weather, but she didn't care. The cold felt clarifying, necessary, a counterweight to the warmth spreading through her chest every time Ethan's shoulder brushed hers. I think about that last fight, he said suddenly, his voice low beneath the hush of falling snow. The one where you said I'd already chosen, that you were just waiting for me to notice you were gone. Maya's throat tightened. She remembered that night with painful clarity, standing in their tiny kitchen, his laptop still open on the table, watching him check his phone even as she tried to explain why she was leaving. Ethan, you were right. He stopped walking, turning to face her under a street lamp that haloed him in soft white light. Snow caught in his dark hair, on his shoulders, and she had the absurd thought that suffering had made him more beautiful, had carved something essential into his features that success alone could never have created. I chose the company. I chose proving everyone wrong who said I'd fail. I chose the future I wanted to build over the present I actually had. His eyes searched hers, desperate for understanding. And I've regretted it every single day since. You got everything you wanted, Maya said, but her voice wavered. You built your empire. You proved them all wrong. I got everything except what mattered. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, could smell the wine on his breath mixing with snowmelt and wool. Do you know what I thought about when I closed my first major deal? When the money finally came through and I could afford anything I wanted? He didn't wait for her answer. I thought about calling you, about finding you and saying I'd finally done it, that now we could have everything. And then I realized you'd been asking me to choose you when I had nothing, and I'd failed. Succeeding later didn't change that I'd failed when it actually mattered. Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes, fought them back. I couldn't keep waiting, Ethan. I couldn't keep being the thing you'd get to when you had time. I know. His hand rose slowly, giving her time to refuse, before his fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. I know, and I don't blame you. I blame myself for not understanding that love isn't something you schedule. It's not a phase 2 priority or a goal you optimize for. It's the thing you choose every day, in every moment, or it dies. The vulnerability in his voice undid something in her chest. This wasn't the Ethan she'd known, the one who'd had answers for everything, who'd believed effort and intelligence could solve any problem. This was someone who'd learned through loss, who carried his mistakes like scars he couldn't hide. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Tonight, this... what are you hoping for?" He let his hand fall away, creating space that felt like its own form of honesty. "I don't know," he admitted. "When Vanessa said she knew someone I should meet, I said yes, because it had been too long since I let anyone get close. I didn't know it was you, but now that it is..." He paused, struggling with words in a way the old Ethan never had. "I want to know if the person I've become is someone you could trust. Not the person I was, not the person who failed you. The person I am now, after learning what losing you cost me." Maya looked away, down the street where her apartment waited with its careful solitude, its safe routines, its life built specifically to never need anyone the way she'd needed him. She'd dated since their breakup. Kind men, available men, men who texted back and showed up and never made her feel secondary. But none of them had ever reached the places Ethan had lived in, the depths he'd touched without trying, the way he'd made her feel entirely seen and entirely abandoned all at once. "I built a life without you," she said carefully. "A good life. The gallery, my artists, my apartment, my friends. I built something stable. I know you did. I'm not asking you to give that up." He shoved his hands in his coat pockets, and she recognized the gesture. Self-restraint, preventing himself from reaching for what he wanted. "I'm asking if there's any room in that life for someone who's finally learned what you tried to teach me 7 years ago." The question hung between them, weighted with possibility and risk. A couple passed by, laughing and holding hands, their joy a stark contrast to the complicated tension threading through the snow-hushed street. Maya watched them go, feeling the pull of two futures, one safe and solitary, one terrifying and alive with potential. "I don't want to be hurt again," she whispered. "Then don't give me another chance." His voice was steady, but she heard the fracture underneath. "Walk away right now, and I'll respect it. I'll tell Vanessa to never mention me again. I'll stay out of your neighborhood, your world, your life." He took a shaking breath. "But if there's any part of you that believes people can change, that wants to see if what we had can become something better, then let me try. Let me prove that I finally understand what I lost." Maya closed her eyes, feeling snowflakes melt against her skin like tiny dissolutions, each one a small surrender. When she opened them again, Ethan was watching her with an expression that combined hope and resignation, waiting for a verdict he clearly didn't expect to win. "One coffee," she heard herself say. "Tomorrow. No drivers, no fancy restaurants, just coffee." The smile that broke across his face was sunrise after endless night, transforming him back into someone younger, less burdened. "Tomorrow," he repeated, like a promise he was afraid to believe. "Where?" You remember that place on Beacon Hill? The one with the terrible muffins and the perfect espresso? Where you used to study? Recognition and memory flooded his expression. I remember everything, Maya. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, then turned and walked toward home before she could change her mind, before the warmth in her chest could convince her to make promises her scarred heart wasn't ready to keep. Maya didn't sleep. She lay in her bed watching snow accumulate on her fire escape, watching the sky lighten from black to gray to pale winter blue, replaying every moment of the evening until the memories felt worn smooth. At 7 a.m., and she gave up and made coffee, standing at her kitchen window in an oversized sweater, watching Christmas morning emerge over the South End's brick row houses. Her phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Merry Christmas. How did it go? He texted me at 1 a.m. saying it was the best night he's had in years. Call me. Maya stared at the message, feeling the weight of complicity, of manipulation disguised as friendship. Vanessa worked in Ethan's building. Vanessa knew exactly who she'd been setting up. The blind date hadn't been chance. It had been an orchestration, a carefully constructed collision designed by someone who thought she knew what Maya needed better than Maya knew herself. She typed back, "We need to talk, but not today." Another buzz, this time from an unknown number. "Good morning. I know it's early, but I wanted you to know I'm already counting the hours until coffee. I hope you slept better than I did." The message felt intimate, vulnerable in a way that terrified her. She set the phone down without responding, then picked it up again, then set it down. Outside, a family walked past carrying wrapped presents, their laughter muffled by snow and glass. Maya thought about her own family in California, the video call she'd have later, the careful way she never mentioned dating or loneliness, or the gallery's precarious finances. She thought about Ethan's penthouse. She'd seen photos in that magazine profile. All floor-to-ceiling windows, and minimalist furniture and art that cost more than her yearly revenue. She thought about the distance between his world and hers, not just in wealth, but in the gravity of his responsibilities, the demands that came with being the person everyone else depended on. At 9:30, her phone rang. Her mother, FaceTiming from the kitchen, where Maya's father was making his famous cinnamon rolls. They talked about weather and flights and whether Maya would make it home for New Year's. Her mother asked, with careful casualness, if she was seeing anyone. "I had dinner with someone last night," Maya said before she could stop herself. "On Christmas Eve? That sounds serious." Her mother leaned closer to the screen, trying to read her daughter's face across 3,000 miles. "It's complicated. He's someone from before, from college years. The one who broke your heart?" Her mother's voice sharpened with protective instinct. "Maya, honey, I know." Maya forced a smile. "I'm being careful. It's just coffee." But after they hung up, the words echoed hollow. It wasn't just coffee. It was the door she'd spent 7 years keeping locked, opening just enough to let in light and potentially devastation. She arrived at the cafe at 11, deliberately 15 minutes late, needing the small power of making him wait. But when she pushed through the door, shaking snow from her hair, she found him already there in the corner booth they'd once claimed as theirs. He wore jeans and a navy sweater, no suit, no armor, looking more like the man she'd loved than the CEO he'd become. He stood when he saw her, that ingrained courtesy, and she noticed the 2 cups already on the table. Her order, exactly as she used to take it. Oat milk latte, extra shot, cinnamon on top. "You remembered," she said, sliding into the booth. "I told you. I remember everything." He sat back down, hands wrapped around his own black coffee. "I remember you studied here every Sunday. I remember you'd underline passages in purple ink and argue with the authors in the margins. I remember the afternoon you got the acceptance letter for your arts management program and cried so hard I thought something terrible had happened. The specificity of his memory felt like being seen through glass, exposed and known. Maya took a sip of her latte to buy time, tasting perfection and resenting him slightly for knowing her so well. "Ethan, I need to ask you something." She set the cup down with deliberate care. "Last night, you said all these things about regret and change. But what happens when the novelty wears off? When I'm not the one who got away anymore, just someone who needs attention on the nights you have investor calls? When my problems start feeling small compared to your board meetings and acquisitions?" He didn't flinch from the question. "That's fair. That's completely fair to ask." "Because I've seen your schedule. That magazine profile mentioned you work 70-hour weeks. You have properties in 4 countries. You're launching some new sustainable development project that's going to take 5 years to complete." She heard her voice rising, felt years of stored hurt surfacing. "How is any of this different from before? You have even more demands now, more people depending on you, more reasons to put everything else first." "You're right." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. That intense focus she remembered now aimed entirely at her. "I do work long hours. I do have massive responsibilities. But here's what's different. I know what it costs now. I know that success without someone to share it with is just expensive loneliness. I know that building empires means nothing if you're building them alone. Knowing and changing are different things." "I agree. So let me tell you what I've actually changed." He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and turned it toward her. "I hired a CEO for my real estate division 2 years ago. I have a COO who handles operations. I built a team specifically, so I don't have to be everything to everyone anymore. I work 45 hours a week now, sometimes 50. I take Sundays completely off. I see a therapist every Tuesday." He paused, vulnerability etched in every line of his face. "I learned that I was using work to avoid feeling anything real. I learned that I was terrified of being the kind of person who needs someone else, who can't do everything alone. I learned that pride almost destroyed the best thing I ever had." Maya felt something crack in her chest, a fissure in the protective walls she'd built. "You can't just fix 7 years with therapy and delegation, Ethan." "I know I can't. I'm not trying to fix the past. I'm trying to show you I learned from it." He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "Maya, I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to let me earn it. Slowly, carefully, on your terms, at your pace." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. But belief felt like stepping off solid ground into water she couldn't see the bottom of. "I saw the photos," she said quietly. "The magazine profile. You at galas, charity events. There was a woman in one photo, beautiful, laughing at something you said. The caption called her your frequent companion." Ethan's expression shifted, something between understanding and pain. "Natalie Brennan, corporate attorney. We went to events together because it was easier than going alone, because the press expected me to have someone. It was never..." He stopped, choosing words carefully. "It was never real. She knew it wasn't real. We were both just filling space. And what am I supposed to be? Real?" The question came out sharper than intended, edged with fear, disguised as anger. "You were always real." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You're the only thing that's ever been real." The cafe hummed around them, espresso machine hissing, conversations blurring into ambient noise, Christmas music playing softly from overhead speakers. Maya stared at her latte, at the heart pattern in the foam slowly dissolving into chaos. "I can't be your redemption arc," she finally said. "I can't be the prize you win to prove you've changed. I need to matter for who I am now. Not for who I was to you 7 years ago. You do matter for who you are now. He pulled his hand back, giving her space. You built something beautiful with your gallery. You created exactly what you said you would. You're not the girl I knew. You're stronger, more certain, more yourself. And that's who I'm asking to give me a chance. Not the memory. You. Maya looked up from her dissolving latte foam to find Ethan watching her with an expression that held no calculation, no strategy. Just raw, undefended hope threaded with fear. The cafe's warmth pressed against the windows where snow continued to fall. Each flake a small white surrender to gravity and time. I almost came to find you, she said suddenly, the words emerging from somewhere unguarded. 2 years ago. I was walking through the public garden and I saw you on a bench, alone, staring at the pond like you were trying to solve something impossible. She wrapped both hands around her cup, needing the heat. You looked so tired, Ethan. So lonely. And I almost crossed the path and sat down next to you. But then your phone rang and you transformed. Shoulders back, voice confident, becoming the person everyone expected you to be. And I kept walking. His breath caught audibly. I remember that day. It was the anniversary of my mother's death. I'd gone to the garden because it was the only place I could... He trailed off, jaw working. I didn't know you saw me. I've seen you dozens of times over the years. Boston isn't that big. She met his eyes, forcing honesty. I'd see you getting into cars, walking into buildings, once at the bookstore on Boylston buying something in the business section. And every time I'd tell myself I was over it, that seeing you meant nothing. But my heart would race anyway, and I'd spend the rest of the day remembering things I'd promised myself I'd forgotten. Ethan's hand moved across the table, palm up, an offering rather than a demand. This time Maya took it, their fingers threading together with the ease of muscle memory, of patterns the body refused to forget. I need to tell you why I really agreed to that blind date, he said. Why I said yes when Vanessa offered to set me up with someone she thought I'd connect with. Maya nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. 6 months ago, I was in Tokyo closing a deal, biggest of my career. Everything I'd worked toward for a decade, finally happening. And when it was done, when everyone was celebrating, I went back to my hotel room and sat on the bed in the dark. His thumb traced slow circles on her palm, the gesture anchoring him. I called my assistant and asked her to book me into a grief counseling program, because I realized I'd been grieving you for 7 years, and I'd never let myself actually feel it. I'd just worked harder, built more, proved more, like achievement could fill the space you left. Ethan, let me finish. Please. He took a shaky breath. I spent 3 months in therapy learning how to sit with loss, with regret, with the fact that I'd destroyed the best thing in my life through neglect disguised as ambition. And my therapist asked me what I wanted my life to look like in 5 years. Not my company, not my portfolio, my actual life. And I couldn't answer, Maya. I had no idea. Because every version of the future I'd ever wanted had you in it, and I'd convinced myself that was impossible, that I'd lost that chance forever. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks before she could stop them, hot against her cold skin. You broke my heart, she whispered. You made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I could never be as important as your goals. I know. God, Maya, I know. His own eyes were bright with unshed tears. And I can't undo that. I can't give you back those years or erase that pain. But I can tell you that you were always enough, more than enough. I was the one who wasn't enough. I wasn't brave enough to be vulnerable, to admit I needed you more than I needed success. I hid behind work because it felt safer than risking failure at the thing that actually mattered. She pulled her hand back, not to create distance, but to wipe her face, to gather herself. Around them, the cafe continued its Christmas morning rhythm. Couples sharing pastries, families with restless children, students hunched over laptops. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the small earthquake happening in the corner booth. "What are you asking for?" Maya's voice emerged steadier now, clearer. Specifically, because grand gestures and beautiful words are easy. I need to know what you're actually offering. Ethan sat back, considering, giving her question the weight it deserved. I'm offering time, consistency, showing up, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. I'm offering transparency about my schedule, my stress, my fears. I'm offering the right to call me out when I start slipping into old patterns, to tell me when I'm not present, to demand what you need without feeling like you're competing with my work. He paused, vulnerability raw in every word. I'm offering the man I should have been 7 years ago, if I'd been brave enough and wise enough and humble enough to know what mattered. And if I can't get there, Maya asked, if I try and realize the hurt is too deep, that I've changed too much, that we're too different now, then I'll still be grateful you gave me the chance. His voice held no manipulation, no pressure, just honest acceptance. I'd rather have tried and lost you again than spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have been enough this time. The answer settled between them, simple and true. Maya thought about her gallery, about the risks she took on unknown artists, about the way she'd built a career on believing in potential that others couldn't see yet. She thought about the version of herself that had loved Ethan completely, and the version she'd become after losing him, stronger, more self-sufficient, but also more guarded, more afraid of needing anyone. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm terrified that I'll let you back in and you'll prove that people don't really change, that circumstances do but core patterns don't. I'm scared that I'll wake up in 6 months feeling secondary again, wondering why I thought this time would be different. Those are valid fears. He leaned forward, that intensity returning but tempered now with gentleness. And I can't promise to be perfect. I'll probably mess up. I'll probably have weeks where work gets overwhelming, and I'm not as present as I should be. But I can promise that this time, I'll notice. I'll course correct. I'll choose you over the deal, over the meeting, over the opportunity that seems urgent, but isn't actually important. Maya felt herself softening, felt the defensive walls she'd maintained so carefully beginning to develop cracks. Start slow, she said finally. No grand gestures, no expensive gifts. Just show up, consistently. Let me see who you are now in the everyday moments, not just in the extraordinary ones. Relief flooded his expression, followed immediately by determination. Slow, consistent, every day. He nodded, committing each word to memory. Can I ask what that looks like specifically, so I don't accidentally push too hard or assume too much? She appreciated the question, the care in asking rather than assuming. Coffee once a week, maybe a walk if the weather's decent. Let me meet the person you've become without the pressure of trying to recreate what we had before. She paused, feeling her way through unfamiliar territory. And I need you to be honest when work gets intense, when things are hard. Don't hide behind everything's fine the way you used to. I can do that. I will do that. He reached across the table again, slower this time, and she let him take her hand. Thank you for not walking away. Thank you for giving me a chance I know I don't deserve, but will spend every day trying to earn. They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined across scarred wood, the cafe's warmth cocooning them from the winter beyond the windows. It wasn't forgiveness yet, wasn't reconciliation, but it was a door opening just enough to let possibility slip through, fragile and terrifying and alive with potential. "Tell me about your gallery," Ethan said softly. "Not the public information. Tell me what it feels like when you find a new artist, when someone takes a risk on a piece that speaks to them. Tell me about the parts that don't make it into magazine features." And Maya, feeling something loosen in her chest, began to talk. She told him about Marcus, the street artist whose murals she'd discovered under a bridge, now selling out shows. She told him about the nights she stayed late in the gallery, walking through exhibitions in the dark, feeling the presence of all that creative courage. She told him about the financial stress, the constant precarious balance, the way she sometimes questioned whether she was being brave or just foolish. Ethan listened like he was memorizing every word, like her struggles mattered as much as his triumphs, like this, right here, right now, was exactly where he wanted to be. And for the first time in 7 years, Maya let herself wonder if maybe, just maybe, people could change after all. 3 weeks passed in careful increments. Coffee on Wednesdays became their anchor. The same corner booth, the same oat milk latte, conversations that stretched from an hour to 2 to 3, until the cafe staff began recognizing them as regulars again. Ethan showed up early every time, never canceled, never rescheduled, his presence as reliable as the snow that continued to blanket Boston in layers of white silence. He told her about the sustainable housing project consuming his days. Affordable units built with environmental innovation, a 5-year plan that wouldn't generate profit for 3 years, but mattered more than any deal he'd ever closed. She told him about the young painters she'd discovered working nights at a diner, whose canvases captured urban loneliness with devastating beauty. They talked about books and ambition, and the ways success had surprised them both with its weight. On the 4th Wednesday, he asked if she'd like to see his office. Not the executive suite, he clarified quickly, but the small room on the 23rd floor where he still went when he needed to think, where his first failed pitch deck hung framed beside photos of buildings he'd helped create. Maya agreed, curious about the spaces that shaped his days, about the life he'd built in her absence. The Cross Capitol building rose like a glass monument in the financial district, all sharp angles and reflected sky. Ethan met her in the lobby, casual in slacks and a sweater, leading her past security guards who nodded respectfully. The elevator climbed in smooth silence, and Maya watched the city shrink beneath them, felt her stomach tighten with something between anticipation and anxiety. The thinking room was smaller than she expected, more human. One wall of windows overlooking the harbor, the rest covered in whiteboards filled with sketches and calculations. A worn leather chair faced the view. On the desk sat a framed photo that made her breath catch. The two of them at graduation, laughing, his arm around her shoulders, both of them impossibly young and certain the world would bend to their dreams. "You kept this," she said quietly, picking up the frame. "I kept everything." He stood behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth, distant enough to give her space. "Cards you made me, concert tickets, the napkin where you first sketched your gallery idea. I told myself I was holding on to good memories, but really I think I was refusing to let you become just the past." Maya set the photo down carefully, turning to face him. The afternoon light streaming through the windows cast his face in gold, highlighted the silver at his temples, the fine lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent looking forward, rarely back. "This is real for you," she said, not quite a question. "This isn't just nostalgia or guilt or wanting to fix a mistake. This is the most real thing in my life." He stepped closer, his hands rising to frame her face with a gentleness that undid her. "Maya, I'm falling in love with who you are now. Not who you were, not the memory I held on to. The woman who fights for her artists, who turns down corporate sponsorships because they compromise her vision, who wears mismatched socks and still argues with authors in book margins. That woman. This woman." Her heart hammered against her ribs. 7 years of protective distance dissolving in the space of a confession. Ethan, you don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know that this isn't about redemption, or second chances, or proving something. It's about the fact that every Wednesday, I count the hours until I see you. That I've rearranged my entire life around making sure I'm present for what matters. That when I imagine my future now, you're in every version of it, and the ones without you feel hollow and pointless and wrong. She kissed him, rose on her toes and pressed her mouth to his, swallowing whatever else he might have said, answering with action instead of words. He made a sound of surprise and relief, his arms coming around her waist, pulling her close with 7 years of longing compressed into a single moment of contact. The kiss was familiar and entirely new. She remembered the shape of his mouth, the way he held her like she was precious and essential. But there was a reverence now that hadn't existed before, a gratitude in his touch that spoke of understanding loss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she pressed her forehead to his chest and felt his heart racing beneath expensive fabric. "I'm terrified," she whispered against him. "I'm absolutely terrified of how much I want this." "Good. Me too." His hand stroked through her hair, that soothing gesture she'd missed more than she'd admitted. Being terrified means it matters. Means we both know what we could lose. They stood like that for a long moment, the city sprawling beneath them, the future suddenly less abstract and more present. Then Maya's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket. She pulled back reluctantly, checking the screen, her expression shifting immediately to concern. "It's the gallery. Water main break on our street. Vanessa says there's flooding." She was already moving toward the door, mind racing through implications. "My entire winter exhibition, all of Marcus's new work. I'm coming with you." Ethan grabbed his coat, his phone already out. "I'm calling my property manager. We own the building 2 blocks over. If we need to relocate the art temporarily, we can use the ground floor commercial space. It's empty right now." Maya paused at the elevator, looking back at him. The old Ethan would have offered money, would have tried to solve her problem from a distance. This Ethan was already putting on his coat, already making himself part of the solution instead of just funding it. They reached the gallery 20 minutes later to find controlled chaos. Water seeped under the front door, pooling on the concrete floor. Vanessa and 2 artists were frantically moving pieces to higher shelving, but the space was limited. Marcus's largest canvas, a 6-foot meditation on urban isolation that had taken him 8 months to complete, leaned against the back wall, inches from spreading water. "We need to get everything out," Maya said, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. "Van, call everyone on the collective list. Tell them to bring vehicles, blankets to wrap the pieces." "Already on it." Vanessa was typing rapidly, then looked up and registered Ethan's presence with surprise. "You brought backup?" "He has space," Maya said simply, and something in her tone made Vanessa smile despite the crisis. For the next 3 hours, they worked. Ethan had texted his team, and within 30 minutes, a moving crew arrived with proper equipment and protective materials. Maya directed traffic, her art history training translating into decisive action about handling, spacing, climate needs. Ethan moved beside her, following her instructions without question, treating each piece with the care she demanded. She watched him cradle a delicate sculpture like it was made of glass and memory, watched him listen intently as Marcus explained the emotional archaeology of his work, watched him write careful notes about temperature and light requirements. This wasn't performance, wasn't wealth-solving problems from a distance. This was presence, was partnership, was showing up in the messy, unglamorous moments that defined real intimacy. By 9 p.m., every piece was safely relocated. The new space was raw, exposed brick, industrial lighting, but Maya could already see its potential. Marcus walked through slowly, his expression shifting from relief to wonder. "This light," he said quietly. "This is actually better than the gallery. The height, the way sound moves. Ms. Chen, this could be something really special." Maya looked around, seeing what he saw. The bones of possibility, the way crisis had revealed opportunity. The collective could work here, could create here, could maybe even stay here if Ethan was offering. She turned to him, the question forming, and found him already watching her with understanding. "The space is yours," he said before she could ask. "For as long as you need it. If you want to stay permanently, we can work out terms that make sense for the collective, not for my bottom line. Ethan, I can't just accept. You're not accepting charity. You're accepting a partnership from someone who believes in what you're building." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Let me support your dream, the way you once supported mine. Let me be part of what matters to you, not just adjacent to it." Around them, the artists were already imagining, already planning, their voices rising with exhausted excitement. Vanessa caught Maya's eye and gave a subtle thumbs up. Marcus was sketching on the back of a receipt, capturing angles and possibilities. Maya felt something shift inside her, the last resistant wall crumbling, the fear of needing someone finally giving way to the deeper terror of pushing away someone who'd proven, over weeks of steady presence and crisis-born partnership, that they'd learned what love actually required. "Okay," she said softly. "Partners." The smile that broke across Ethan's face was sunrise and homecoming and promise all at once. He pulled her close, regardless of who was watching, and pressed his lips to her forehead, in a gesture that felt like benediction and commitment. "Partners," he echoed. "In this and everything else, you'll let me be part of." Spring arrived slowly in Boston, the city shedding its winter skin in reluctant increments, gray snow melting into sidewalk rivers, crocuses pushing through frozen ground, light lingering longer each evening. Maya stood at the window of what everyone now called the Bridge Street Gallery, watching cherry blossoms drift past like pink snow, and marveled at how completely her life had transformed in 4 months. The collective had flourished in the new space. Marcus's exhibition had sold out opening night, his urban isolation series resonating in ways the old gallery never could have facilitated. 3 more artists had joined, drawn by the raw authenticity of exposed brick and honest light. The Boston Globe had called it the most exciting development in the city's art scene in a decade. Ethan had been there for all of it, not hovering, not controlling, but present in the way she'd once desperately needed. He came to openings and listened to artists with genuine curiosity. He'd learned everyone's names, remembered their projects, asked thoughtful questions. When Maya worked late, he brought dinner and sat quietly reading, his presence companionable rather than demanding. They'd moved slowly, carefully, building foundation before constructing anything that could crumble. Their first real date after the flood had been ice skating on the Frog Pond, both clumsy and laughing. The first time they'd made love, it had been different from before. Slower, more reverent, weighted with the knowledge of what absence felt like. Now, 4 months after Christmas Eve, they were building something neither had anticipated. Not a recreation of what they'd had, but something more sustainable, more honest, more rooted in who they'd become. "You're thinking loud again," Ethan's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him in the doorway, tie loosened, looking tired but content. It was Wednesday, their day, still sacred despite now seeing each other most evenings. "Just noticing how different everything is," Maya said, crossing to him. He pulled her close immediately, and she felt the day's tension leave his body. "Good different?" he asked against her hair. "Terrifyingly good different." She pulled back to look at him. "Your meeting with the mayor, how did it go?" She approved the affordable housing project. His eyes lit with genuine joy. Groundbreaking in June, 200 units, 40% below market rate. It's going to take 5 years, but it matters. More than the bottom line, Maya finished, smiling. You're rubbing off on me. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her mouth, quick, affectionate touches. Want to get dinner? Actually, Maya interrupted, nervous energy flooding her. I have something to show you first, upstairs. She'd converted the smallest room into a private studio, where she'd started painting again. She hadn't painted since college, had convinced herself curating was enough. But something about the security of the space, the inspiration of working artists, had awakened old hungers. She led Ethan upstairs, her heart racing with vulnerability. The room glowed in late afternoon light, and on the easel sat her first completed piece, an abstract meditation on architecture and absence, buildings reaching toward each other across space. Ethan stopped in the doorway, his expression shifting to something deeper. He moved closer, studying the canvas with careful attention. It's us, he said finally, his voice rough. The years apart, the space between what we were and what we're becoming. He turned to her, eyes bright. Maya, this is extraordinary. I don't know if it's any good, she admitted. I haven't shown anyone else yet. It's honest. He pulled her into his arms. I'm so proud of you for taking the risk, for letting yourself create again. She looked up at him. This man who'd broken her heart and then spent months proving he'd learned what love required. I couldn't have done it without the safety of knowing someone was showing up consistently. We gave each other that, he corrected gently, which is actually why I need to tell you something. Maya's stomach flipped. Tell me what? I've been in conversations with my board about stepping back from CEO. The words came quickly. I'd stay on as chairman, but I want to bring in someone for day-to-day operations. MIT approached me about teaching, ethical development, sustainable practices, 2 days a week. Ethan. Maya's eyes filled with tears. That's incredible. Are you sure? This isn't just because of us? It's because of what I need. He framed her face with both hands. I need to know that in 30 years, I didn't miss my life while building things. I need to wake up next to you without checking my phone. I need to be the partner you deserve in actual daily reality. She kissed him then, pouring 7 years of longing and 4 months of rebuilding into the contact. He responded with matching intensity, both of them breathless and alive with possibility. Move in with me, she said impulsively. My apartment's tiny, but move in anyway. Yes. No hesitation. Or you move into the penthouse. There's space for a studio. I don't want the penthouse, Maya interrupted firmly. I want messy and imperfect and real. Let's find a new place together, something we choose as partners. Understanding dawned in his expression. Something neither of us has history with. I love that. They stayed in the studio as light faded, talking about lease agreements and combining lives. Later, walking home through spring twilight, cherry blossoms drifting like blessings, Ethan laced his fingers through hers. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing who I could become instead of just who I was, for believing people could change. Maya squeezed his hand, feeling the rightness of this moment. Thank you for becoming someone worth that risk, for doing the work, for showing up until showing up became the foundation. She thought about Christmas Eve, about blind dates and impossible recognition, about how devastated she'd been to see him, how certain she'd been that some doors once closed stayed closed forever. But sometimes doors opened again. Sometimes people learned from their mistakes. Sometimes love got a second chance because both people were finally brave enough to do the hard work of transformation. As they reached her apartment building, cherry blossoms still falling like temporary magic, Maya realized she wasn't afraid anymore. The terror had transmuted into trust. Not blind trust, but the earned kind, built on months of consistent presence. She turned to Ethan on the front steps and pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like spring and second chances, and home. "I love you," she said against his mouth. "Not who you were or might become. Who you are right now." His smile was everything. "I love you. Have loved you through 7 years of absence and 4 months of rebuilding, and will love you through whatever comes next." They climbed the stairs together, stepping into the warm light of a future they were finally ready to build, slowly, carefully, honestly, together. If this story touched you, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for the next journey.